Today's topic is one that touches so many hearts. It's about chemical pregnancies. If you've ever wondered about what are the signs and symptoms, the emotional impact, and what it means for your fertility, you're in the right place. Welcome to Fertility TV. I'm Dr. Mark Sklar, your go-to guide on this incredible journey towards fertility and pregnancy. For over 2 decades, I've had the privilege of supporting couples from every corner of the globe through my online coaching program. Now, if you've recently experienced a chemical pregnancy or simply curious about what it entails, I want you to know that you're not alone. Today, we're unraveling the mystery together. And by the end of this video, you'll have the knowledge you need to navigate this chapter of your fertility journey. Chemical pregnancies can be emotionally challenging, but understanding them is a crucial step to make the process a bit easier. Stick around because over the next few minutes in this video, I'll not only shed light on the signs and emotional impact, but also share strategies to cope and the role that a fertility coach can have on your fertility journey. Now, let's dive deeper into this. Going through any loss, any miscarriage is devastating and is super difficult. Chemical pregnancy really is no different other than it happens much sooner. So to define a chemical pregnancy for all of you, it's a very early miscarriage or loss that happens in the first 5 weeks of pregnancy. And often you're not finding out that you're even pregnant till week 4, because when we start counting from the date of your last period. So when I say in the first 5 weeks of your pregnancy, really it means that for you, it's happening in the first week of your pregnancy. And this is an embryo that forms and may even start to implant into your uterine lining, but then it stops developing. Now, chemical pregnancies occur so early that many who miscarry don't even realize it. They don't even know that it's happening. So those are actually the ones that are happening before your menstruation is supposed to come. So sometimes what happens, and I know many of you have experienced this, is that you ovulate, you have intercourse, you start to feel signs and symptoms that you might be pregnant. And then as you get closer to that day of menstruation, maybe those symptoms disappear. And then when you bleed, it might even be heavier or more painful. This easily could have been a chemical pregnancy, but you never even had an opportunity to test your HCG to see if you were pregnant. Other cases, which are the ones that I kind of alluded to when I started talking, are the ones where you get to your period, it doesn't come, you test, you have a positive, but then over the course of that next week, it subsides, it goes away, or you have that loss. Those are all considered potentially chemical pregnancies. And so much of what's considered a chemical pregnancy comes into play based on the level of your hormones, your HCG. So if they stay low and they don't really rise, that would also classify as a chemical pregnancy in this arena. Now, any way you cut it, a miscarriage, any loss, a chemical pregnancy, it's devastating. It's so emotionally difficult for all of us. So what I want to do with this video is just shed some clarity on what it all entails, what it all means, and let you understand what some of your next steps are and the sort of support that you should be looking for to get the results that you like, which is a healthy pregnancy. So what are the signs and symptoms that might tell you or clue you in that you might be having a chemical pregnancy? Well, one of them is a late period, right? Because if you don't get your period, then you're gonna speculate that you might be pregnant and you would test. Also a positive pregnancy, but a low positive pregnancy. So what we like to see on the first day of a missed period when you do an HCG test, and this is not just one of those at-home tests, by the way, the number that you're looking for is at least 75 or 100, and that with every 2 days, every 48 hours, that number doubles. What we often see in a chemical pregnancy is that that number is well below that. You might just have like a 10 or a 20 or even a 50, and then maybe it goes up just a little bit or it actually goes down the next time you test. Those will all fall into this category of a chemical pregnancy. Those home pregnancy tests that just say positive or pregnant don't really give us a clue because they're designed to trigger when that HCG is really low. So you're going to find out that you're pregnant, but you won't really know the number. So I really encourage everyone that once you get a home pregnancy test that's positive, is that you reach out to your providers to have an HCG test done to understand what that level is. And I usually also do that in conjunction with a progesterone test so that we can get all that information at one time and know where your hormones are at. Testing is so important here, which is why I want you to be proactive about it. But But often what you're going to hear is you're going to reach out to your OBGYN and they're going to say, oh, there's no reason to do testing. The home pregnancy test is fine, and let's just schedule you for an ultrasound at week 7 or 8. In my book, that's too late because you miss so much information. You don't even understand, are your numbers doubling? What does your progesterone look like? They're also going to say, well, there's really nothing you can do anyway, which is not entirely true. But even if that was true, I want knowledge. I want information. I want to understand what are your hormones doing, because that allows you to make proper choices in the future. So I'm really big fan and a big proponent of getting testing done as soon as you find out. So if they won't test for you, find someone who will push for the testing that you deserve so you can also get better understanding for what's going on for yourself, understand and have peace of mind that your pregnancy is a healthy one. But if not, that you also be prepared for the future so you know how to handle that better. And that goes back to this emotional impact. All losses are take an emotional toll, right? Any loss, and a chemical pregnancy is no different. So if that's going to happen, I want you to be better prepared. And I think being better prepared is having the information that you need. One thing that might be important here, but doesn't make the process easier, is that chemical pregnancies are relatively common. And they are not necessarily indicative of your future ability to conceive and have a healthy pregnancy. About 50% of the women in my Hope coaching program have had some form of a chemical pregnancy. And it could even be higher because many of them don't even know and don't report it. So I only say that to you, even though as hard as that is, I want you to know that it's common, and it doesn't mean that you can't get a healthy pregnancy in the future. So I want that to give you a little bit of peace of mind, because that does help on the emotional piece as well. So what are the main causes? Why do we even have chemical pregnancies? Well, the first most common one is a chromosomal abnormality. And I would say that the sooner that you have a loss, the sooner that you have that chemical, and the lower your levels are, the more likely it is that it was a chemical chromosomal abnormality. That's super common. The other more common piece is low progesterone, which is why I want you to have your progesterone levels tested. That could also be why you have an early loss, although those can kind of maintain a little bit longer depending on what your progesterone levels are, how much they rise or when they drop. But that's why that testing is so important. Now, the longer that a pregnancy goes, and the more repeated losses that you've had, whether they've been recurrent pregnancy loss or chemical losses, then the more likely that we're going to have other factors involved. These can be autoimmune issues. These can be blood clotting factors. These can be infections of some sort. Often I see someone who just gets pregnant or is still not at their period, they're still in their luteal phase, and they get an infection, they get sick, they have the flu or COVID or a virus of some sort, and that triggers a loss. This is also fairly common. And then the other reason that we might see a loss is uterine abnormalities. If there's some sort of physical, structural abnormality in the uterine cavity and with the endometrium, this can also lead to an early loss. So initially, what I would say is it good to have some of these tests done? Well, I always say, let's start with the HCG and the progesterone. Does it make sense to do some of the additional testing? I start to dive deeper into those once we've had multiple losses or multiple chemical pregnancies. Then I think those causes are much more likely. So what sort of support should someone seek out when they are experiencing chemical pregnancies? I think really the most important, first and foremost, is emotional support, because any loss is so challenging emotionally. It gets our hopes up. We believe that we have a healthy pregnancy. And so when we have that loss, it's devastating. Not to mention that it sets ourselves up for the next pregnancy to have a little PTSD, right? Like, oh, well, the last one didn't end well. Is this one going to end well? And when can I feel comfortable going through a pregnancy? This is something that I hear all the time. So first and foremost, I want all of you to seek out emotional support. It's actually why over a year ago, I incorporated into the Hope coaching program a whole emotional support piece to the program around miscarriage and loss. We actually have a support group once a month just on this topic because it's so common and so important to be able to have a future successful pregnancy. We have to deal with the loss and the grief that we experience with any chemical pregnancy or any miscarriage. So this is huge. Just to clarify, a single chemical pregnancy usually does not indicate any long-term fertility issues. But reoccurrent chemical pregnancies do have implications and can mean that there are other issues going on that we need to dive into. And I mentioned those earlier, right? The structural issues, the autoimmune issues, potentially infections and blood clotting factors. Like those might be things that we need to dive into afterwards. But first and foremost, we need to take care of ourselves emotionally, which is why that piece is so important. And then when we're looking for proper support, we need to have a team or a provider who's on our side, who sees the bigger picture and understands what we need so that they can be there for us. And this is really what, fertility coaching is all about. It's designed to be customized for your specific needs. And this is where that customization comes in, because one loss or a chemical pregnancy is different than multiple losses, and each one of us have different variables or factors that impact our health and our fertility and cause these things to occur. We need personalized attention, and that is super important. But I want you all to take away a little bit of hope from all of this. And what I mean by that is, more often than not, we see successful pregnancies after chemical losses. And I'm telling you from working with the women in my coaching program that there are tons of success stories around this topic, that just because you've had a loss doesn't mean you can't have a healthy pregnancy in the future. And I want you to know that it absolutely is possible. But to get the proper support for yourselves, you actually need to take action, and you need to find those providers who are there to support you on your journey so you can have a healthy pregnancy and have the family that you desire. Now, if you're ready for a personalized plan, if you're ready to dive deeper into your fertility struggles, and you want someone to understand what you've been going through, to dive deeper into your losses if you've had losses or any chemical pregnancies, then I want to invite you to apply to join my Hope Fertility Coaching Program. All you have to do is go to marksklar.com/discovery call, and I'll drop that link in the description below. And you'll be able to speak to a real person on my team who's going to evaluate your case and talk to you to see if my program and having me as your fertility coach is the right fit for you. Before you do that, or while you're doing that, if you want to hear a story of hope of women who have been struggling, who have had losses and then been successful and had the support that I'm talking about, then I'm going to leave one of their stories right here for all of you. I'm going to leave that in the description below as well so you can check it out there. And until the next video, stay fertile.